Chapter 31. Where to invest money. What shall I do with my money? Enormous profits in trust companies. The most costly bell in the world, the Bell telephone. Edward Bellamy's vision. The best paying stocks. $11 per day in a lodging house. How a young man made $10,000. How to start with nothing and be worth $100,000 when you are 40 years old. The first question is how to get money. The second, how to invest it. The general distrust of money concerns is seen in the enormous deposits in the savings banks. A disposal of savings, which yields the smallest returns, and also in the readiness, not to say rush, to take government bonds when only 3%, or even less, is offered. We give a few of the best paying investments, but the list is by no means exhaustive. The first four are in a section, Brooklyn borough, of a single city, but there is no reason to doubt that other cities, and other sections of the same city, can make an equally good showing. Indeed, many Western concerns pay much higher dividends. 947. Illuminating companies. Of the 10 illuminating companies of Brooklyn, not one last year paid a less dividend than 5%, and one paid 10%. 948. Trust companies. Of the 8 trust companies in the same borough, only one paid less than 8%, and that paid 6%. The highest paid 16%. 949. Banks. Of the 23 banks of Brooklyn, State, and National, one paid its stockholders 16%. 114, 2, 12, 1, 10, and 4, 8, only one paid less than 5%. 950. Insurance companies. Of the 4 local insurance companies, one paid its stockholders 20%, and the others 12, 10, and 5. 951. Tin Plate Company. All the tin manufacturers of the country are about to be associated in one great company, to be known as the American Tin Plate Company. The stockholders expect to double their profits. 952. Pottery Combination. Under the laws of New Jersey, the Pottery Trust has just been organized with a capital of $20 million. The price of the stock is rapidly advancing. 953. Consolidated Ice and Ice Company, to be called the Consolidated Ice, will soon control all the trade of New York City. Prices are to go up, and profits, instead of a meager 4 or 5%, as at present, will, it is expected, be 8 or 10%. 954. Flour Trust. British and American stockholders have combined to form one of the biggest trusts in the world. The capital of the new company will be about $150 million, and the output 95,000 barrels of flour daily. Should the profits be only 25 cents a barrel, the net earnings will be nearly $25,000 a day. But it is expected that with the increased price, the profits will be at least double that figure. 955. Furniture Combine. This is a new trust which is soon to be floated, and which proposes to control the manufacture of all the school furniture in the United States. The capital is to be $17 million. Some idea of the enormous profits awaiting the stockholders may be formed when it is stated that the present output is more than $15 million. The combination means decreased expenses in operation, higher prices for customers, and, of course, greater incomes for stockholders. 956. Telephone monopoly. One of the greatest monopolies of the country is that of the Bell telephone. The company has increased its capital stock in 18 years from $110,000 to $30 million. In that time, it has earned $42,903,680. It pays dividends of 18%, and could pay more if allowed to do so by its charter. The surplus is used to increase the capital stock, so that in addition to its enormous dividends, every little while it presents its stockholders with new blocks of this exceedingly profitable stock. The present price of shares is about $280. 957. A great electrical company. Another of Bellamy's dreams is to be realized. New York capitalists, with millions of dollars at their command, have united in a great scheme to supply electrical energy to run the elevated and surface railroads and the factories of the metropolis. They propose to do away with steam entirely, except for heating purposes. They will control more than 1,000 square miles of the watersheds of the Catskills, and the mountain streams will be harnessed to furnish electricity for New York. The The company claimed to have the names of such well-known persons as Thomas C. Platt, Silas B. Dutcher, and Edward Lauterbach as interested persons in the scheme, and it is said that the undertaking will be on a much grander scale than the similar one at Niagara, to which the Vanderbilts, the Webbs, and other famous manipulators of finance have furnished backing. If this scheme should materialize, it will undoubtedly be one of the best-paying investments. 958. Industrial stocks. Here is a partial list of the best-paying stocks. Of course, where the interest is large, the price of these stocks is correspondingly high. The investor, before paying the high prices asked, should use his best judgment in considering whether the present rates are likely to be maintained. The highest dividends on industrial stocks last year were as follows: Adams Express 8, Consolidated Gas New York 8, Peter Lauria Tobacco 8, American Tobacco 9, Diamond Match 10, American Sugar Refining Company 12, American Bell Telephone 18, Standard Oil 33, Wellsbach Light 80. 959. Railroads. Dividend stock in such railroads as the Pennsylvania, Lake Shore, Michigan Central, New York, and New Haven are safe and profitable investments if you can get them. The last named road has paid 10%. For many years, though recently the figures have dropped to 8. The railroad stocks paying the highest dividends last year were as follows: New York, New Haven, and Hartford, 8%. Great Southern Alabama, 9. Manchester and Lawrence, 10. Norwich and Worcester, 10. Boston and Providence, 10. Connecticut River, 10. Georgia, 11. Northern New Hampshire, 11. Philadelphia, Germantown, and Northern, 12. Pennsylvania Coal, 16. 960. Lodging house. A man leased an abandoned hotel containing 100 small rooms and fitted them up with single beds. He charged a uniform price of 25 cents a night. The location was downtown in New York, the congested district where congregate travelers, tradesmen, workingmen, and the vast class of floaters. His rooms were nearly always full. Income per day, $25. Daily expenses: night clerk, $2, 2 chambermaids, $15 each per month, $1. Rent, $5, lights, $1, laundry, $3, sundries, $1. Total expenses per day, $13. Net profit, $12 per day. He says, "I am sure I could double these profits if I could double my accommodations." 961. Real estate. A young man, 21 years of age, and possessing $500, bought a tract of land in the outskirts of a suburban city for $1,500. The tract contained 20 acres, and he paid $500 down and gave a mortgage for the remainder. He had the property surveyed and divided into lots, 8 to the acre. The tract was located on the bend of a river, and he called it Riverside Park. Lots were advertised for sale at $100 each. The first year he cleared off the mortgage by the sale of lots. He had remaining 145 lots. In 5 years he sold all these lots at an average price of $85. Total amount received for lots, $13,825. Price of land, $1,500. Taxes, $625. Surveying, grading, etc., $762. Advertising and other methods of booming the property, $1,272. Total cost and expenses, $3,534. Net profit, $10,291. By repeating this process on a larger scale in another city, this young man, who started at 16 years of age with nothing, and by hard work and economy had saved $500 at 21, found himself at the age of 40 with $100,000. The secrets of his success were 4: shrewdness in foreseeing where property would be likely to advance, energy in quickly changing the property from a farm into building lots, taste in making them attractive and giving the place a pretty name, and, most important of all, the knowing how to create a market. We have known this process repeated by others with almost equally marked success. In all our large cities, there are land companies developing suburban property and making money rapidly. Chapter 32. Money in spare time. Fortunes in spare moments. Millions, missed for want of economy of time. Stories of famous men. Lost, somewhere between sunrise and sunset, 2 golden hours, each set with 60 diamond minutes. No reward is offered, for they are gone forever. 962. 5 minutes a day before a box of paints or a bunch of finely shaded ribbons will make you expert in colors, a position of great importance and large salary in many stores. 963. 10 minutes a day practicing stenography after you have learned the system from a good textbook will fit you in a year's time to take any place where the services of a shorthand writer are required. 964. 15 minutes a day cutting out of newspapers data in regard to persons of note and classifying the same will give you in a few years an accumulation of material which you can dispose of to advantage to reporters and publishers on sudden demand of such matter as the occasion of the death of the men in the public eye. 965. 20 minutes a day drumming on a writing machine should give you an expertness with the keys that will ensure steady and profitable employment. 966. 25 minutes a day will enable you to master any language in a year. Then tutorships, professorships, and translations of foreign works at good prices await your energy. 967. 30 minutes a day running rapidly over figures will make you an expert accountant, if not even a lightning calculator, for whose services businessmen are willing to pay liberally. Time is money. 968. 35 minutes a day writing up some incident of news will give you a facility of the pen in the course of 1 or 2 years, so that you can command a good salary as a reporter. Success in this department depends upon a writer's imagination and skill. 969. 40 minutes a day over reading selections will make you an elocutionist. Readers and reciters receive all the way from $10 to $100 for an evening's work. 970. 45 minutes a day will give you a knowledge of bookkeeping in all its branches. Let the spare time be spent in acquiring a plain, round business hand, then master a book on the subject. After that, you should offer your services free to a friend for 3/4 of an hour every day. Bookkeepers command from $1,000 to $3,000 salary. 971. 50 minutes a day divided into periods of 25 minutes each should make you a good singer, even if you have only a mediocre voice. 1/4's work under a good teacher should give you the rudiments of the art, together with foundation practice, and from this you can go on by yourself. You can always get a friend who will correct your faults gratis, and it is the elimination of faults, with steady practice, that brings success. Singers in churches command all the way from $100 to $5,000 a year. And the work is done chiefly on Sundays, when it does not conflict with other employments. 972. 55 minutes a day with a book containing teachers' examination questions will give you such a command of the branches taught in our public schools as to ensure you a position on the educational staff. You should master not one book only, but all you can procure which have a list of questions asked at examinations. Teachers get from $500 to $5,000, according to ability. 973. 60 minutes a day imitating the styles of our best storytellers will give you, as it did Stevenson, an easy command of all styles and an ability to write stories netting thousands of dollars. 974. 75 minutes a day will make you in the course of 4 or 5 years an engraver or painter in all the fields of the increasing application of those arts. Prices for this kind of work are so varied that no figures can be given, but they are always high, and some persons have made fortunes with pen and brush. 975. 80 minutes a day placing letters in pigeonholes and in learning such other knowledge as any handler of the mails will willingly impart to you, will give you such deft fingers and such quick brains that it should not be difficult for you to secure a well-paid position in a large post office. 976. 90 minutes a day will enable you to master the intricate and almost infinite details of the insurance business in all its branches. Knowledge of the business and ability to persuade men are the 2 requisites of highest success in this occupation. There are insurance agents receiving as high as $10,000 a year, and presidents of companies $25,000, and even more. There is no reason why you should not reach the top. The horses, Plod and Pluck, will draw you there. 977. 100 minutes a day will initiate you thoroughly into the banking or brokerage business. Read all books on the subject, classify your knowledge, repeat it over and over in your spare moments, Ask some friend in the business about any point you do not understand. After 3 years of hard study, offer your spare time free to a banker or broker, informing him of what you have done. You will have to begin at the bottom, but the salaries grow fat as you rise and are enormously rich at the top. 978. 110 minutes a day will give you for each year of your study a knowledge of a separate branch of the civil service. 5 years will give you 5 branches. Appointments are now nearly all made by competitive examination. Salaries in some departments rise as high as $10,000. 979. 120 minutes a day should enable you to master any musical instrument under the sun. You will require a teacher for a part of the time, but the most important thing is steady, persistent practice. The field for good music is constantly widening, the demands for good musicians are steadily increasing, and the remuneration is correspondingly advancing. Money is literally pouring into the lap of persons who can captivate the human ear. Chapter 33. Money in Odds and Ends. How a family saved $100 on a salary of $700. Economy is quite as large a factor as industry in the gaining of a fortune. With people living on small incomes, it is often the one element that determines whether they make both ends meet, or run in debt and ultimately fail. The following example shows how one family, whose income was only $700 a year, actually saved $100. Mr. of found himself getting behind in money matters and determined to practice rigid economy. He found a great many leakages in the household. Perhaps someone who reads this will find the same or similar leaks and learn why he is not prospering. 980. Waste scraps of meat thrown away, making loss of dinners worth $12.50. Puddings thrown away, $6. Waste of coal in not sifting, $5. 1/2 barrel of apples from not sorting, $1.50. Wash tub fell to pieces because left dry, $1. $1 fourth loaf of bread every day thrown away, 90 loaves at 10 cents per loaf, $9. $10 dozen preserves, 1/4 lost at 25 cents per can, $7.50. $20 barrels of ashes, 5 cents per barrel, $1. Waste of bones which could be used for soup, $1.50. Waste of heat at the damper, 1/10 in a ton of coal, 10 tons per year, $5. Waste of gas in not turning down lights when not needed, $12. Canned salmon, 1/4 spoiled because can was left open, 25 cans, $1. Cheese, 1/2 used, the rest thrown away because hard, 25 pounds, $2. Potatoes, for want of sprouting, 1 barrel, $1. Clothing, for lack of attention, $15. Milk, 375 quarts at 8 cents per quart, 1/5 allowed to spoil, $6. Umbrellas which could be mended, $1. Shoes thrown away when they could be used by having heels fixed, $3. Kitchen slops, $1. Waste of vegetables, $5. Wear of carpet for lack of rugs in places most used, $3. Total waste, $100. Chapter 34. Strange Ways of Making Money. 1,000 ways to make a living. The humbug of great names, the mania for old and rare things, the relic manufacture, the imitation enterprise, the box office, clique, the cure, fad, the fake, news agency, the museum, freak, the treasure, excitements, the literary bureau, the watered stock. There are ways of making money that lie so far out of the ordinary channels as to warrant this chapter. Some of them are only strange because they are new, as the telephone and the wood pulp were strange a generation ago. Others, being decidedly odd in themselves, will doubtless always be pursued only by a few, and considered by the many to be curious ways of making a living. Success is easy when once you succeed. This is the case with goods which have achieved a name. Frequently, the founder of the name is bankrupt, retired, or dead, but the goods continue to be manufactured and sold under the original trademark. Countless thousands of dollars are paid every year for shoes, hats, hardware, groceries, and innumerable other articles, at rates above the average price when the goods are not a farthing better. The deluded buyers are simply paying for a name. Others have a mania for the collection of all kinds of bric-a-brac. Old coins and rare books are seized and hoarded as eagerly as if made of gold. This mania is harmless in itself and gives its possessors no doubt much pleasure, but they are made the prey of Shylocks who carry on a regular trade of manufacturing old articles. So also with the relic craze. There are actually manufactories where relics are made. Conscienceless persons take advantage of the curiosity and piety of travelers to palm off all sorts of relics upon them at preposterous prices. Then there are the limitless imitations that are on the market. Some of them, such as patent medicines, brands of groceries, oleomargarine, etc., are imitations pure and simple. Others are adulterations with more or less of the genuine. So vast and profitable are these methods of deception that the government has been compelled to interfere to protect its citizens from fraud. The box office clique is only a less pernicious, but equally barefaced, means of getting money. When a Bernhardt or an Irving is to perform, an announcement is made that the box office will be open at 9 o'clock on a certain morning. As early as 10 or even 6, on the previous evening, you will see a solitary man wend his way to the theater and silently square his back against the door. In time, he is followed by another, and yet another, so that by midnight perhaps a dozen or 20 of these grim-faced men are lined against the wall. Not one of them has the slightest idea of seeing the play. It is simply their way of earning a living. For the next morning, they will sell their places in line to the highest bidders. Of the cure, fattest their number is legion. We do not mean the makers of patent medicines, of which we have treated elsewhere, but the men who profess to believe they have some unique and original way of ridding mankind of evil. Thus we have the gold cure, the barefoot cure, the mind cure, the faith cure, the cold water cure, and the hot water cure, in fact, the whole great family of pathies. Many of these curists, no doubt, are sincere, but whether so or not, they have reaped large sums of money. Equally industrious is the fake news agency. There are agencies that manufacture news to order. Papers, they reason, must have news. If there is any subject concerning which the public is eager to read, and for any reason the reporters cannot give the facts, the fake news agency is a welcome resort. These bogus news agents are paid a certain amount a stick for their false news. Museum freaks, too, are manufactured to order, and sometimes are made beforehand in anticipation of a market. Treasure enthusiasts are not quite as common now as formerly, and yet the hot Klondike fever is but a kid's buried treasure under another name and on a mammoth scale. Of the 100 who attempt to get to Dawson City, 75 will reach the place, 50 will earn a bear living under all manner of hardships, 25 will make about the same as if they had stayed at home, 10 will bring back a $100 worth of dust, 3 will do tolerably well, and 1 will get rich. The literary bureau is a more ingenious means to make a living. A set of bright young men advertise that, for a consideration, they will send a sermon, lecture, address, or after-dinner speech to any person who may suddenly find himself called upon when unprepared. Of the watered stock and other incorporated swindles, almost every investor has purchased his experience at a dear rate. This is a method of increasing one's capital stock in a company without the contribution of any new funds, and it is one of the most common of frauds. These are but a few of the many curious and ingenious ways by which people attempt to make a living. In many cases, especially the last named, there is no doubt that the promoters of these enterprises often do get rich at the expense of the public. Other strange ways of making a living are the catching of butterflies or canary birds at a penny apiece, and the sifting of ashes and collecting of cinders. In London, sand is sold on the street for scouring and as gravel for birds. Then there is the curiosity shop. In Genoa, there are marriage brokers who have a list of names of marriageable girls divided into different classes, with an account of the fortunes, personal attraction, etc. of each. They charge 2 to 3%. Commission on a contract. In Munich, there are female bill posters, and in Paris, there are women who make a living by letting out chairs on the street. Also, in the same city, men are hired to cry the rate of exchange. Then there are the men who gather old clothes and the street sweepers. There are 6,000 rag gatherers in Paris. Then there are the refuse cleaners and the glass eye makers, the latter furnishing you with a crystal eyeball at rates from $10 to $20, when the physicians and oculists charge $60 or $70 for similar services. Then there are postage stamp gatherers and chair menders. In fact, the ways of making a living are legion. We formulate a few of the best of this class. 981. Experts there are many kinds: accountant, color, handwriting, etc. Anyone who confines his life work to a very small and special field can command a large price for his services. Experts often receive $10 a day. 982. Detectives. Besides the men in the employ of the United States and local authorities, there are many who work in private agencies. The pay depends upon the nature of the work and the wealth of the employers. In celebrated cases where suspected parties had to be shadowed for months, a detective has received as much as $5,000. 983. Traveling poet. Since the days of Wesley, the traveling preacher has been a familiar figure, but who since the time of Homer has seen a traveling poet? Yet one called on the author the other day. His patrons are chiefly obscure people who pay from $1 to $10 to have their history, home, achievements, or virtues lauded in verse. It is hardly necessary to say that the poems are not published, but kept as household treasures for coming grandchildren. 984. Old coins. Some have found a profitable source of revenue in the hunting and hoarding of old coins. One numismatist recently sold a dollar coin of 1804 for $5,000. 985. Purveyor of personals. A Russian named Rometer started this enterprise in a small way. Now, we have press-clipping bureaus so large as to employ 70 persons each. In some of these places, from 5,000 to 7,000 papers are read every day, and the weekly clippings amount to more than 100,000. There are now press-clipping bureaus in nearly all of our large cities. 986. Gold on sea bottom. Another class of men make money out of other men's misfortunes. That is, by stripping wrecks of their valuables. Others secure the services of divers and search the bottom of the ocean, where vessels containing treasures are supposed to have gone down. A few years ago, a company from England went with divers to a place near Bermuda, where a vessel had been sunk a long time before, and secured from the wreck the sum of $1,500,000. 987. Rare books. The art of book collecting has been pursued with profit by some persons. It requires no capital if one simply confines his efforts to bookstalls, though, if pursued on a large scale, money is required for advertising and correspondence. Mr. Charles B. Foote of New York City is a veteran bibliophile and has made a specialty of first editions. Recently, he made 3 auction sales of his stores and realized more than $20,000, and his home is full of treasures. 988. Old Italian violins. They sell at prices ranging from $500 to $5,000, when you can buy them at all, which is seldom, for they are mostly in the hands of wealthy collectors. Now we will let you into a great secret. It is not the kind of wood or the form of the instrument alone which produces the rare quality of sound, but it lies also in the kind of varnish used. By experimenting with varnish, you can produce a Stradivarius, which will sell for almost any amount you choose to ask. 989. Magic silk. It seems like the trick of the magician to speak of turning cotton into silk, but it can actually be done, or at least cotton can be made to resemble silk, so that discrimination between the two fabrics is impossible. About 50 years ago, one Mercer, a French chemist, showed that cotton, when subjected to the action of concentrated acid or alkalis, contracts and has a greater affinity for dyes. But it has only just been discovered that mercerization gives also a brilliant luster to the cotton. The cotton is stretched violently during the operation, and when an energetic rubbing is added to the tension, the tissue receives a permanent luster. It thus replaces silk at a fraction of its cost and offers a splendid chance for financial enterprise. 990. The gold cure. If the gold cure, for which so much is claimed, can really take away the appetite for liquor, there is an immense field for its exercise and room for the making of many fortunes in the cure of America's drunkards. In the United States alone, an exceedingly moderate estimate makes the number of this unfortunate class 1,600,000. At the very modest calculation that only 1/10 of these can be induced to try the cure. And if each case nets the proprietor of the institution only $25, and the estimate should probably be doubled, and even trebled, there are $15 million in it for the public benefactors, who can thus curb the evil of dram drinking. 991. The telephone newspaper. Here is an idea for newspaper men. In Budapest, Hungary, there is a telephone newspaper, the first and only one in the world. The main office is in telephone communication with the Reichstag, corresponding to our Congress. And it often happens that important speeches are known to the public while the speaker is still addressing the House. The latest reports from stock exchanges, as well as political news, are heard before any paper has printed them. A short summary of all important items is given at noon and again in the evening. Subscribers are entertained with music and literary articles in the evenings, the latter being often spoken into the telephone by the original authors. The cost is only 2 cents a day, and the company are said to be making money even at that figure. 992. Race and stock tippers. In addition to the regular brokers who supply tips to their customers, there is now a set of professional tippers who profess to have inside information and make it a business to give tips to anybody who will pay for them. They receive in some cases a fixed sum from their patrons, and in other cases they take a liberal percentage of the profits. 993. Promoters. This is a new vocation. The promoter promotes anything and everything that will pay. If you want to accomplish anything from the launching of a railroad enterprise to the selling of a penny patent, you pay the promoter a certain sum to do the work. He buys influence, lobbies legislators, controls newspapers, and hypnotizes the public generally. Not all promoters come as high as Mr. Ernest Tooley, whose own price can be imagined when he claims to have paid $250,000 to English peers for their influence. Yet we learn that the American Tin Plate Company gave the promoters of the trust 10,000,000 in stock for their work. Chapter 35. Highly paying occupations. Some golden plums. What electrical experts get the confidential man rapid rise of an advertising agent editors in Clover Railroad presidents, come high $25,000, engineer the paying berths in medicine. Some astonishing lawyers, fees what Vanderbilt paid a steamboat man. There are some positions in which enormous salaries are paid. They are, of course, places where great responsibilities are incurred. Strange as it may seem, however, occupations where thousands of human lives are imperiled are not compensated at so high a rate as those where great finances are at stake. Here are a few of the golden plums. 994. Electrical experts. The use of electricity has so increased in the last few years, and so many new uses have been found for it, that there are today nearly 50 different departments of human labor where it is employed, and naturally these have differentiated as many kinds of electricians. A young man in a New York establishment says, "I am in receipt of a salary of $4,000 as superintendent of the dynamo building. And recently I had an offer of $7,000 to go with a new company out west." 995. The confidential man. Another man in New York began his career in a store at wages of only $7 a week. He is now the firm's confidential man who decides on all important purchases and receives a salary of $8,000 a year. 996. The advertising agent. The advertising agency is, from a financial standpoint, the most important department in the makeup of a paper or periodical. On one of our most popular magazines, there is today a young man hardly over 30 years of age who has advanced through the various grades of work until he is now superintendent of the advertising department, receiving a remuneration of $7,000 a year. 997. Great daily editors. Editors of leading departments in our great dailies receive from $2,000 upward. Managing editors and editors-in-chief receive many times that sum. One man in the New York Sun office has for his services a salary of $15,000, and besides this does outside literary work to the amount of $5,000 yearly. 998. Medical specialists. There is still room at the top of the medical world. The largest harvests are reaped by those who devote themselves to particular parts of the human framework, and at last are able to set up as consulting physicians. One doctor, whose apartments are crowded daily, informed the author of this work that he was treating 1,150 patients. The celebrated Dr. Loomis, for some time before his death, made $50,000 a year. 999. Legal counselors. What is true of medicine is equally so of the law. Specialists in such branches as real estate, legacies, insurance, etc., are in receipt of immense revenue. Celebrated bar pleaders also have grown rich. The names of Rufus and Joseph Choate of W.M. Evarts and Ben Butler are examples of men who have received single fees of $10,000. $1 young lawyer says, I began 7 years ago, and during this period my earnings, with their investments, amount to $200,000. Legal talent is also liberally paid for by the great corporations, all of which employ at a regular salary one or more attorneys. 1,000. Corporation presidents of banks receive from $5,000 to $50,000. Of insurance companies, there are at least 3 which pay their presidents $50,000. Of railroad presidents, 1 receives $100,000, 3 receive $50,000, $8 receives $20,000, and 12 $10,000. In other occupations, deepwater divers are paid at the rate of $10 an hour and fractions thereof. Circus managers, $5,000 a year, and the buying man of great mercantile firms about the same. Bank cashiers get from $4,000 to $7,000, custom house officers from $3,000 to $7,000, judges of city courts, New York, $6,000, lecturers from $10 to $200 per night, preachers from $20,000 in John Hall's pulpit to a pitiful $300 in some country town, school principals from $1,500 to $3,000. Among exceptional salaries may be mentioned that of a steamboat manager of the Vanderbilt lines on the Mississippi, who once received $60,000 a year, also the engineer of a large manufactory, who is paid $25,000. Is not that high? Inquired a visitor at the works. He is cheap for us, was the reply, illustrating the truth that talent and skill are everywhere and always in demand. The concern could not afford to lose him to rival firms who wanted his services, and so found it cheaper to retain him even at that high figure. Appendix. We subjoin a table showing the average salary or wages in 100 of the leading occupations. In most cases, the figures have been compiled from government reports, but where no reports could be obtained, an estimate has been made by taking the average receipts from certain districts. In the latter instances, of course, the table cannot be considered perfectly reliable. This is especially the case with the professions of the lawyer, the doctor, and the clergyman. Still, as the sections of the country taken may be considered as fairly representative of the whole, the figures will probably be found not far amiss. Some persons will be surprised to learn the average lawyer and physician receive respectively only $1,210 and $1,053. But they should bear in mind that while the pay in these professions is sometimes as high as $25,000 and even $50,000 a year, a great number of beginners and unsuccessful men are toiling or not toiling for a mere pittance. Were it not for the 10% of very successful men in these professions who are making fortunes, the average receipts would be even smaller by $200 or $300 than they appear in the table. Other cases where the figures may not have as much value as could be desired are under the headings which really comprise a group of occupations instead of a single one, as that of the journalist and the electrician. Yet others where the general name is that of a genus comprising many species, as that of the engineer. And still others where there is a great difference in the value of the work performed, as in the case of teachers and factory operatives. Again, in business ventures, such as those of storekeepers, bankers, brokers, and others, many have actually lost money. And this reduces immensely the average, while among the so-called working classes, days of idleness, willing or enforced, operate in the same way. Yet, on the whole, if anyone consults the table as a general guide to the pecuniary rewards of the various trades and professions, he will find that they have been placed in their relative financial standing. In the occupations named, employees are generally meant, employers and independent workers being printed in capitals. Average pay in 100 occupations. Engravers wood, 684 surgeons, 616 theatrical managers and showmen, 605 bankers and brokers, 601 electricians, 560 saloonkeepers, 475 designers textile, 383 decorators china and stoneware, 248 hotel keepers, 245 lawyers, 210 architects, 206 teachers, all kinds of. Schools, 153 dairymen, 152. Merchants, 149 dentists, 115 engineers all kinds, 092 draftsmen, 090 furniture workers, 087 physicians, 053 dyers, 040 furriers, 036 engravers metals, 014 actors, livery stable keepers, journalists, clergymen, house rents not included, meat dealers, painters, house, grocers, gunsmiths, restaurant keepers, masons, bricklayers and plasterers, plumbers, electrotypers, hatters, musicians, miners, bookbinders, gold beaters, watchmakers, door, sash, and blind makers, glassworkers, boot and shoemakers, blacksmiths, carpenters, farmers including living, conductors, and motormen, telegraphers, cooks, artists, photographers, typewriters, cigar makers, coopers, printers, millwrights, harness makers, soap makers, upholsterers, quarrymen, sawyers, tailors, locksmiths, machinists, press feeders, firemen, sailmakers, coachmen, barbers, clerks, cutlers, molders, dressmakers, boiler makers, cabinet makers, tinsmiths, carriage makers, draymen, butchers, soldiers, authors, agents, millers, waiters, lumbermen and raftsmen, brewers, tanners, farm laborers besides board, factory operatives, weavers, peddlers, bartenders, hunters, trappers and guides, gardeners, laborers, sailors, confectioners, stevedores, nurses besides board, hostlers besides board, servants besides board. The end. The Abbey Press, 5th Avenue, New York. Announcements may be ordered through any bookseller or will be mailed free for the published price. Authors and artists: Collins, Wilkie, Cruikshank, George J.R. DeMezels, Jean Dickens, Charles Drummond, Henry Flattery, M. Douglas Gardner, W.H. Graham, Marie Hamilton, Sam A. Ham, Margarita, Arlena Hart, Irene Whittimer, Howard, Lady Constance, Jennings, Edwin B. Johnson, Stanley Edwards, Jock I. Morris, Cavan E. Thomas, Kearney, Bell, Kent, Charles Mankowski, Mary D. Martin, Carlos Miller, Andrew J. Munn, Charles Clark. Napoliello, R.R. Palier, Emile A. Parks, Harry Pash, Florence Rydell, Charles F. Runyon, N.P. Scribner, Kimball, Stevenson, Robert Louis Tabor, Edward A. Talst, Count Walker, Jesse A. Winter, C. Gordon. Advertising agents directory, the arranged alphabetically and in states, including Great Britain and Canada. Nothing of this kind has ever before appeared. All who, for any reason, wish to know who the advertising agents are and how they may be reached will find the desired information here. The directory is brought down strictly to date. Cloth, $1. American eloquence. Characteristic types from colonial times to the present day. A textbook of oratory, by Carlos Martin. American men of the time. Being a dictionary of biographical records of eminent men of the day. Revised to date and edited by Charles F. Rydell, Fellow of the Royal Society of Literature. American women of the time. Being a dictionary of biographical records of eminent living women. Revised to date and edited by Charles F. Rydell, Fellow of the Royal Society of Literature. It is the first time a book of reference of this kind has been compiled in the interests of any women in any country. The efforts of the publishers will be directed towards the end of securing a standard work, founded on reliable data, and which will be a suitable addition to any bookshelf. Charles Dickens, Heroines and Women Folk. Some Thoughts Concerning Them, a Revised Lecture, by Charles F. E. Rydell with drawings of Dot and Edith Domy, by Florence Pash, 3rd edition. Cloth, 25 cents. A delightful little book, Institute. Charles Dickens Reader and Reciter, for the home, school, and platform. Compiled with an introduction by Charles F. Rydell, Fellow of the Royal Society of Literature, formerly member of the Council of the Lecturers' Institute of Great Britain. Author of Wellerisms, Charles Dickens, Heroines and Women Folk, etc. Church Workers' Book. 1,000 Plans, by as many successful clergymen and other Christian workers, by Carlos Martin. Continental Cavalier, A. by Kimball Scribner, author of The Honor of a Princess, 23,000, The Love of the Princess Alice, 15,000, and In the Land of the Loon. The author writes here in his well-known popular style and contributes one more, and not the least, to the eagerly awaited historic novels of revolutionary times. His characters are resurrections, and in them the past lives again. Mr. Kimball Scribner is rapidly becoming one of the most popular of the younger writers of today. With 4 illustrations on copper, cloth 12 mo, $1. Curious Case of General Delaney Smythe, by By W. H. Gardner, Lieutenant Colonel USA, retired. Not in many years has a more interesting or mysterious story appeared than this. Those who follow the fortunes of General Delaney Smythe will certainly corroborate this statement. The book will have a wide and permanent sale, with 4 illustrations by Miss Lowenstein. Cloth, $1. Cross of Honor, A Military Dramalette in One Act, by Charles F. Rydell and C. Gordon Winter Jean de Mezils, very daintily printed and bound, $1. Danger Signals for New Century Manhood, by Edward A. Tabor, is a masterly discussion of the dangers that confront the individual as well as the society of today in the United States. It is also a beautiful portraiture of the young manhood which should exist in the 20th century, including photograph and biographical sketch of the author. 12 mo, cloth-bound, 316 pages, $1. Devout Bluebeard, A. by Marie Graham. This is a keen, satirical story which hits off foibles and humbugs in religious administration, not in an infidel spirit, but by a friendly hand and from the inside. One is kept guessing who's who. Cloth 12 mo, $1. Dry Toast. Some Thoughts Upon Some Subjects Not Generally Dealt With, by Charles F. Rydell. Contents: a piece of the crust, brains and black butter, on the mending of the bellows, on backbone or rather the want of it. Some phases of modern honesty, on giving advice and taking it, concerning hums, on flapdoodle the thick and the thin, on cranks, on pouring cold water, on the art of making oneself uncomfortable, on always doing something, some of the advantages of being religious, on playing one's cards, on living it down, on friendship, on fame, etc. Cloth, $1. Directory of Medical Women, being a list of those ladies who have qualified in medicine and surgery, and who are officially registered as such, with statistical and general information of universities, colleges, hospitals, etc. From Clouds to Sunshine, or The Evolution of a Soul by E. Thomas Cavan, author of A Duel of Wits, etc. Cloth, 12 mo, 200 pages, $1. Gems of Jewish Oratory. A selection from the finest specimens of Jewish oratory, together with an introduction, by Madison C. Peters, author of Justice to the Jew, etc. Gems of Jewish Prose. A selection from the finest authors of Jewish prose, together with an introduction, by Madison C. Peters, author of Justice to the Jew. Gems of Jewish Verse. A selection from the finest authors of Jewish poetry, together with an introduction, by Madison C. Peters, author of Justice to the Jew, etc. Greatest Thing in the World, by Henry Drummond. Haunts of Kipling. Fully illustrated. A complete history and description of all the localities described by Rudyard Kipling in his works, by Margarita Arlina Hom and Charles F. Rydell. House of a Trader, by Prosper Mérimée. How and What to Write. A book for authors, with some practical hints on journalism, together with a chapter on illustrating for the press, by Charles F. Rydell, Fellow of the Royal Society of Literature. How Success is Won, or The Fight in Life, with celebrated illustrations, drawn from life by Carlos Martin. In this book, the author has produced a number of stirring illustrations written in a style and manner that command the attention of both the young and old. It is an essential book for everybody. Intellectual People, by William Adolphus Clark. Since most readers belong to this class, all such will find their lineaments reflected in these pages, as in a looking-glass. Many surprises await those who gaze herein, whether of mortification or of gratification. We must read to see. Cloth, 50 cents. Japanese paper, 25 cents. International Directory of Authors, with a full list of the titles of their works, dates of publication, etc., compiled and edited by Charles F. Rydell. Last of the Musketeers. A novel founded on the romantic career of General de Galifet, French Minister of War, by Carlos Martin. Literary Life. The most popular magazine for authors, publishers, booksellers, and everyone interested in literature, issued. It is a thoroughly impartial journal, readable from cover to cover, 5 cents per copy or 50 cents per annum, mailed free. Little Scarecrow, by Morris Jock. Lodging in the Night, by Robert Louis Stevenson. This is the first time that this celebrated story has been produced in a manner worthy of the reputation of its talented author. It will be fully illustrated and issued in a most dainty binding, forming a dainty and unique gift book. Love and Pride by R. Napoliello. This novel admirably portrays the play and counterplay of master passions. The hero, an Italian, bears his soul to inspection so that we see and participate in the struggle, a rare psychological study. Cloth, 50 cents. Japanese paper, 25 cents. Love's Random Shot by Wilkie Collins. Magistracy, the being a directory and biographical dictionary of the Justices of the Peace of the United States, compiled and edited by Charles F. Riedel. Master and Man by Count Tolstoy. More People We Meet by Charles F. Riedel. Illustrated by Mark Zangwill, etc. A limited edition of signed and numbered copies at $1. Nurses We Meet. Some Piquant Pictures by Charles F. Riedel, a limited edition of numbered and signed copies, $1. Old School Days by Andrew J. Miller. This book should have a wide reading. It is healthy and breezy with youth and sport. In its pages, the experiences of all of us are laughably and vividly recalled. Cloth, $1. On the Charleston by Irene Whittemore Hart. The smell of the sea and the odors of the woods and fields of Guam are in these pages. The tale sways like the ocean swell between Jack Tar and the soldiers in the Yanko-Spanko War. Cloth, 12 mo, $1. Pair of Knaves and a Few Trumps, A. by M. Douglas Flattery. The literary quality of this fascinating novel would alone call attention to it. When to this are added plots and counterplots, dramatic contests and denouements, the book presents a combination of attractions quite unique and irresistible. Mr. Flattery's books are always readable and interesting. Cloth, 12 mo, illustrated, $1. People and Property by Edwin B. Jennings. An animated, logical discussion of the question of corporate rights versus human rights. Lincoln said that, when a dollar comes in conflict with a man, he sided with the man. This book is timely, able, and interesting. Cloth, 50 cents, Japanese paper, 25 cents. People We Meet by Charles F. Riedel, fully illustrated by Harry Parks, 3rd and revised edition, 25 cents. A collection of characteristic sketches drawn with much humor and crisply described. Scotsman. Pictures from a New York boarding house. Fully illustrated by Charles F. Riedel, $1. Pulpit Eloquence. Characteristic types with brief prefatory sketches of illustrious preachers by Carlos Martin. Pocket Island by Charles Clark Munn, a story of country life in New England, a remarkably attractive book written in a remarkably attractive manner, with frontispiece. Cloth, 12 mo, 200 pages, $1. Quaker Scout, A. by N. P. Runyon. The contradictory title adopted by Mr. Runyon piques curiosity, which, upon investigation, will be abundantly rewarded. Incidents without number succeed one another in rapid and romantic succession, making the reader hold his breath and pant in sympathy with the recital. Cloth, $1.25. Riedel's Elocutionist. A book of readings and recitations for the home, school, and platform. Selected and arranged, together with a chapter on reading and speaking, by Charles F. Riedel, Fellow of the Royal Society of Literature, and formerly a member of the Council of the Lecturers, Institute of Great Britain. Sermonic Silhouettes. 300 outlines of sermons by 300 distinguished clergymen on various themes, with index, by Carlos Martin. Slaveholder's Daughter, A. Full of Southern life and character and readable from cover to cover, by Bell Carney, with 11 full-page illustrations and frontispiece. Cloth, 12 mo, 270 pages, $1. Social Sinners. A realistic novel of today, by Émile A. Palier, portrays a number of sinners and a few saints in the modern social order. Certain passages hold the reader spellbound. There are several heroes and heroines, all true to life after their respective kind. Cloth, mo, $1. Temper Cure the by Stanley Edwards Johnson. In the guise of a novel, the author gives a fanciful account of a cure for bad temper. There are no dull pages in this book. Cloth, 50 cents. Japanese paper, 25 cents. 10 Years in Cossack Slavery. By Mary Domenkowski. This is a graphic, thrilling description of the personal experiences of a patriotic Pole, condemned to Siberia for loving his country, not wisely but too well. The book explains the existing hatred of the Russian government and gives the reasons therefor. Cloth, $1.25. Vengeance of the Mob, by Sam A. Hamilton, an exciting story of Florida in which the characteristics and the effects of Judge Lynch's rule are exploited. A thrilling love story runs through the novel, with which the vengeance of the mob comes into collision. Cloth, 12 mo, $1. Wellerisms. From Pickwick and Master Humphrey's Clock. Selected by Charles F. Rydell and edited with an introduction by Charles Kent, author of The Humor and Pathos of Charles Dickens. 4th edition, with a new and original drawing by George Cruikshank, Jr., of Mr. Samuel Weller. Cloth, $1. This book has met with remarkable success. The original drawing of Sam Weller, by George Cruikshank, Jr., a nephew of the original Cruikshank, is alone worth the money, for the reason that it shows a mastery of fine work and detail in pen and ink not possessed by any other artist of the time. It is a unique and acceptable addition to Dickensiana, and every lover and admirer of Charles Dickens should possess a copy. When at Home and Society Guide. Giving Days When at Home of the Upper Classes, compiled and edited by Charles F. Rydell, to which is added a chapter on the etiquette of calls and calling, by Lady Constance Howard, each season. Widows We Meet. 12 of them, brief, pithy characterizations by Charles F. Rydell, fully illustrated. Young Gentlemen of Today. 18 of them, by Charles F. Rydell, fully illustrated. Zenith Memo Pad, designed by Lady Constance Howard and Mr. Charles F. Rydell, containing 7-day tear-off sheets and cover, in convenient form either for laying flat on the desk or suspending from rack, etc. A complete calendar for the year, postal information, chief events, lessons for Sundays, quotations from well-known authors, and spaces for memoranda, appointments, etc. indispensable for everyone who writes, makes notes, etc. 25 cents. This useful addition to the writing table is nicely got up, Princess. Is very well arranged, with suitable quotations and memoranda for every day in the year. It may be kept on the table or suspended against the wall or bookshelf, whichever may be most convenient, and in either position it is handy and takes up but a small amount of space. Queen. End of project Gutenberg's 1000 Ways to Make Money, by Paige Fox.